rather unique here. We're getting started once again, getting back in rhythm, and that's exactly what the episode is about. I thought it was only fair to talk to others about getting back in rhythm as we are getting back in rhythm ourselves when it comes to the podcast.
Yeah, we always talked about getting back into rhythm, but when we were in close vicinity during this entire quarantine stage, essentially, we didn't feel like it was necessary to do the podcast because we would just be chatting with each other pretty much every other day or so. And so now that you've moved on to the next stage, the next chapter in Phuket at the moment, now it's just a matter of reassessing and figuring out how to get back into a rhythm now that things have changed for us again. And we figured it would be a lot of parallels that you could probably draw from life wherever you are in the world, regardless if you're in Thailand, Europe, US, or anywhere pretty much, and trying to get into a good routine, just a routine of health and fitness, and obviously Muay Thai if you can, using Muay Thai as the vehicle. So yeah, I'm excited to jump into it, but just quick catch up, man. It's been a couple days since I've seen you. So what's going on?
Man, it's been a hectic few days, just relocating your life again. You know how it is in Thailand, especially once you settle somewhere for a long time. The longest amount of time that we ever spent anywhere was just now on the island with you for the past 6 months. We were grateful and lucky enough to be able to, get to training early. Everything else was kind of shut down, and we were pretty much quarantined on the island where there was no cases. So we were able to get into training and get a clinch flow and be able to spar early on, while the other gyms were wearing those ridiculous plastic masks in front of their face while sparring and training, which wasn't really realistic and lasted a whole, 48 hours, however long it lasted. So it was really beneficial to be on the island and get that early head start. And now, we know where we need to be, and going forward, it looks like we may be moving to Phuket now.
Yeah, so it's been a good indoctrination to Phuket. What was the whole move like? How have you settled in? Obviously, you're training at Powerhouse right now with past guests Eddie and Brooke, and I've always been a big fan of their philosophy, and it looks like they're doing training the right way at their gym. And so I'm excited to hear what's the judgment so far? How's Phuket been, and how's the training been?
I feel like we can do a whole episode on a review of it, but pretty much just to compress it down to a couple of sentences. The way I have always viewed wanting to get into training and even opening up a gym one day is exactly what they are doing. I've seen a lot of similar ways of thinking when it comes to Eddie's philosophy on training, and I felt like it was very similar to the way I do things. And I was thinking in my head this meme, because all of us have the same, chest tattoos and all this different shit. You see that white girl picture, it's good luck finding anyone that looks like me. And all the white girls look exactly the same with Uggs and jean jackets on.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make a meme good luck finding another guy that looks like me. And we all are these tall, lanky guys with the same yant tattoo. So it goes a long way to have people that are on the same page as you, to be able to get into a very competitive gym where a lot of people know exactly what they're doing, and everyone comes in to do work, and there's no distractions in terms of people being on a different page expecting different things. And somehow they're still able to accommodate the amateurs and general pop guys. But for the fighters, it's back to the grind I once remember, being at Namsak Noi Gym and putting in clinching every single session, putting in sparring every single session. The afternoons have 5 rounds on the pads. So all those things really add up. When you think about it, just 3 rounds on the pads, just 3 rounds maybe sparring, and then just kind of cooling down with the repetition, it's a completely different rhythm once you add on those extra rounds and the consistency when it comes to the clinch. It feels like I've woken back up to that level I used to be at. It's a weird thing. Your environment for sure shapes who you are. And it's my brain, my body remembered exactly who I am and the fighter I am just based on the environment that woke it back up.
Yeah, I mean, they're just all fighters there. I mean, that's like what they're trying to do. I mean, I'm sure there's some people there for just general health and fitness, but a majority are fighters and looking to make it like a career. And so being around those types of people is always going to help. But what if you're not around those type of people? How would you go about like shit hit the fan, you had to fly back home to the US? Like, what would you have to do in order to stay persistent, stay consistent, and disciplined with your training, and like have it intentional still as well?
We had that option before this quarantine started, and we were thinking about flying back home on the months that were coming by, people saying they can't get any more visas. So it was definitely an option to go back home. And we were planning, plan A, plan B, and plan C. And plan B was to go back home and to get set up in a way where, we have options at our house to install a heavy bag to do whatever we can, or to get to a private studio, and then like a third option of even getting to the gym, so that there's no excuses of going from one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really important from the whole beginning to look at where you are and why you haven't gotten back in rhythm yet. I feel like a lot of people are having a tough time doing that. Is like they had things to look forward to. So especially people that compete, they look forward to the competition. Competition has slowed down, so it feels like there's a lot less purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with people that can't get to group training classes. Even those semi-private training classes seem like they might not be enough. So I know you yourself have a very practical approach, which I definitely second, though it's not always the way I do it.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like you really take a practical approach to doing this, which is,
well, essentially just creating like a game plan, like a war map, essentially, of like my career and my life, and being able to simultaneously kind of mold them together. Because when I write a lot, and I use a whiteboard a lot to kind of get my thoughts out, and I'm a very visual person, so I need to see like what I'm thinking in a way. And I've realized there's like three main parts of life. It's like life in regards to relationships, finances, general health, and like that kind of stuff. Then there's work. And work in my case is like online work, Muay Thai guy, filming workouts, that kind of stuff. And then there's the training. And this is like self-training. This could be any martial art, it could be Muay Thai, it could be yoga, it could be a sport, but some type of training that's constantly putting you in discomfort and helping you grow. And so essentially it's life, work, and Muay Thai. And so for me, it's really important for me to understand what each subcategory is of those bigger categories, and then figure out which ones are the most important, and then figure out how to go about optimizing those and getting the most out of those. And so I really try to systematically break down each area of my life. And then once I do that, I have long-term goals and visions, and I have to figure out the milestones to get there. And then I just reverse engineer my day to day, my week to week, my month to month, like that. And obviously there's always things that pop up. We get robbed. Like there's pizza problems. There's always like shit, there's always shit happening. But having some type of plan ahead of time will make, at least for me personally, and make it malleable enough where if I need to make adjustments and push some things back and move things around, I can. But I try to stick to the plan as much as I can, because I know that I created this plan, this roadmap to get to my bigger goals. And it's hard. It's hard. It's like constantly pushing yourself, because like I'm trying to get as much as I can out of every day while also maintaining just like balance in life, in the sense where I'm just able to relax. I'm able to enjoy TV. I'm able to enjoy the mindless things in life. But then when I turn on, I want to make sure that like I'm clear, focused on what I'm doing. And I think one thing that's benefited me is when I first started training Muay Thai, we had a really small gym. And it was essentially me and a couple other dudes, Chris Masseri and JJ Russo, my original Muay Thai instructor. Like we were all the same size and we would just work together all the time. But when they weren't around, I had to count on myself to get training in. I needed to do heavy bag work. I needed to do shadow boxing. I needed to run. I needed to figure out what a good strength and conditioning program is. I needed to figure out what fighters eat, like how to maintain my energy. I need to figure all this shit out. And I think a lot of people leave it up to chance and just kind of go with the flow, which can work out, but I feel like at a higher level, if you really want to like pull out as much as you can out of your training, you have to do it under like a telescope and like really, or a microscope rather, and really just get to the granular details that it's going to make or break you in relation to your goals.
Yeah, you know, I feel like spending that extra time on the preparation, even if you can't get to the actionable steps of the process to get to that end goal that you were talking about, you get an extra minute to just sit back and view it. And that grandmaster plan that you were talking about, that like war map that you create, you can perfect that. And I feel like anytime that I perfected an outline, whether it's to create a course or to create anything in my life, like how do I get to Thailand for the first time? Things like that, like setting my budget and making that goal of coming here or even moving here. I've done it both ways, where I've created that master plan and then reverse engineered it the same way you have. And then on that, like throw yourself into the fire type of mentality where I crashed my car. I had nothing left to lose. You know what? Let's swipe the credit card and go and make it work. You know? So I feel like you have to do either one or the other, but both of them like have a route to success in a different way, depending on what type of personality you are, what type of person you are, and what motivates you or gets you to take action steps.
Well, I think, yeah, sorry to cut you off. I think it's a combination of the two. Like it might be weighed on one side more than the other. Like for me, I need a plan, but I also really like think that calculated risks are a must, and like you must like take the leap before you're ready in a lot of areas of life, not just training but work and relationships and that kind of stuff. And so I think it's just find balance between the two that you're constantly trying to figure out. And some seasons you'll be more plan oriented, and other seasons you'll be more go with the flow oriented, and you just kind of have to trust your gut on that. I feel like right now, with the way the world is though right now, that obviously it's hard to make a plan because so much is up in the air, but there are some relative certainties. Like, you know where you are, you know what a regular day-to-day life kind of consists of, whether it's you can't go out at all right now, or you can go out with some minor society norms, whether it's going to the gym or restaurant or grocery shopping, whatever your case is. I just think it's important for you to like assess where you're at right now and figure out ways to like essentially just be happier, just like be a more productive person. Because when, at least me, I was just speaking from experience, me personally, when I'm not just getting better as like a human, whether it's Muay Thai or life or business, I feel, I get anxiety, I get a little depressed, I feel like purposeless. And so it takes time, obviously, and I've battled existential crisis and ups and downs and everything in between. But having that time to self-reflect, which is kind of like forced upon us right now, is important. I just think actually taking the time and not just like Netflix binging without taking any time to actually think and implement a plan to lose weight, or a plan to eventually fight, or a plan to eventually go to Thailand when the borders open up. Because like you can save up money right now if you're working and stuff, and like you can still figure out a plan. And like I was saying before, it's malleable, especially now with COVID and shit. Like you have to be able to adjust on the fly. But I don't know. That's just my general philosophy, and it's worked for me. Obviously, there's always going to be things that I could do better in hindsight. But for the most part, if I don't have a plan laid out in front of me, it's especially because as a fighter, as a martial artist, you have to dictate your training a lot. You have to dictate when you wake up and like what you do to be a martial artist, to be a fighter. And so it takes a lot of self accountability and self discipline, which can be hard. And then you have to figure out like what kind of training should I be doing and what should I be eating. So it's a lot of decisions that you constantly have to make. And most people, when they have all these decisions to make, they get overwhelmed and then they don't make any decision. And I understand, like I've been at that situation too. But yeah, it's better to take action than to not take any action at all, at least in my personal opinion.
Exactly. You can get extremely perfectionistic over that game plan that you were talking about, where it doesn't lead to any action. Like you're spending all of your time planning and making sure that everything is in place and it's perfect before you actually take that first step. I think it's really important that to know that it's going to change, and because of that fact, it's never perfect. Like the most perfect plan is one that you can adapt to. And I feel like that's why when we do, option A, B, and C, especially like us right now, like we moved pretty much all of our belongings to another place, and we were expecting to have a much higher budget. My girlfriend got hired by a new company. Then we had some bad news roll in. We had some issues. Pretty much, this is Thailand. Our goal was, I'm going to spend the extra money to make sure that we have Wi-Fi and everything is set up perfectly. And that was my, plan A. If everything goes perfect, we settle in here. We have this extra budget. Wi-Fi is good. Everything. We get to the house, and I see the router is not plugged in, and I ask what's going on here. I made sure 7 times that there's a stable connection and we can get things going, and it wasn't. So we had to adapt. We spent, in between sessions, spent an entire day at the mall trying to get like a cell phone service set up so we can actually get the hotspot working. Then we ended up having to open up a Thai bank account to make that happen because it was impossible. So all these different obstacles got thrown in our way. And at the end of the day, we still lost. Unfortunately, my girlfriend couldn't continue. Our budget dropped. All of this happened within like 24 hours. So, but we had a plan B. Okay, if we can't be here, we can still continue our work by being in a better position where like we can still be productive and rent like a cheaper apartment that still has a strong connection. And if we can't do this type of work, we can do our personal work where it comes to our online presence, the content that we put out, and then pretty much being more of a transitionary period. And I feel like that has really helped with the stress, especially when what you said, like you have to expect things to come up not only in your personal goals, because those things will be affected by things like relationships and these outside factors that I feel like a lot of people don't think about. Like when I was in the States, I remember some of my first experiences with coaches and seeing how much their personal life has affected both their coaching and their fight career, and just trying to learn from that and seeing like, oh, I have to be really aware of this. Like once these stressors come about, especially right before a fight, you're cutting weight, things like that. These are not, the types of things that you want to deal with when it comes to like these stressful situations. So I was very careful on who I picked to be in a relationship with, how I went on with my life, and to create these plans, but also to have, plan B and C in place. So that stress never really hits. You're like, oh, what the fuck do we do now? Well, B, like we go right there. We know what we're doing. It's not perfect, but we'll manage.
Yeah, I think like I was saying before, just being able to adjust on the fly. I mean, it's like a fight, like if something's not working, then you're not just going to keep fucking doing it over and over again, and you're going to make an adjustment. And that's why there's so many great parallels to training in life, because you're able to see the types of things that you have to change. And it could be as something as physical as actually like moving, or it could be more of a mental thing. And I think one thing that we've kind of hit on a bunch of times is like taking that time to develop some type of objective awareness of where you are and like what you're trying to do, and like not attaching emotion to it, but like figure out like, all right, this is what I'm doing. This is working. This is not working. How do I keep doing what's working and change what's not working? And don't beat yourself up, or don't like whatever. Don't get too wrapped up in the emotions of it, but just get wrapped up in the problem solving of it. Be like a surgeon to a patient and like figuring out where you gotta do surgery or some shit. Maybe that wasn't the best analogy because I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about when it comes to surgery, but that's the operation, the game Operation. You have to figure out the right type of a thing to take out. But yeah, it's an interesting time. And I think a lot of people are trying to readjust. I'm trying to readjust. You're readjusting. But that's just life. I feel like in general, there will always be things that you need to adjust to, and being able to take that step back and objectively look at it and then problem solve it and make a calculated risk, a smart decision, and a study decision. I think that's what can make and break you in any of those 3 major categories of the life that I was talking about.
you went back to the point that we made on one of our last episodes about just being objective and viewing more things through that lens. I just had a question come in through my email the other day after putting out an article, and it was a person that was training rather hard, but feeling like they're not good enough to fight because of the reason that their coach hasn't asked them to. And they were asking, hey, should I just keep putting in work and wait for them to approach me? Or should I actually ask so that way I can pretty much put that thought in their head and see if I'm ready? And from my experience, I thought the answer was pretty straightforward. Is to ask, to communicate, because you never know. Like, it's also likely that they want to know from you that you want to fight and that you're ready to compete, and that is your goal. Sometimes you don't know people's goals, and I feel like, especially with social media, we create stories all the time. You know, like, oh, is he talking about me? Or like, does this person not care about me because they're talking about someone else, and things like that. And we can create these stories in our heads, but there's nothing better than to actually, go face to face with someone and communicate. And the answer is good either way, because if the coach tells you, no, you're not ready, good, keep preparing and getting better.
Yeah.
And then the coach says you're ready, you go, okay, good. Now I just go harder to actually prepare for the fight. So in both cases, the result is a positive result.
Yeah, communication is key. And regardless of your training or life or whatever it may be, it's important to like voice what you're trying to do. If someone doesn't know what you're trying to do, like fighting, especially when we talk about relationships, if the person that you're dating or trying to, or you're married to or whatever, if they don't know like what you're trying to accomplish, then it's going to just hold you back. And then resentment will build up because you feel like they're holding you back and yada, yada, yada. Got to be on the same page. And I mean, we can come full circle to talking about environment. I mean, I can't remember how many times we mentioned the importance of environment. And yes, like physical environment is obviously very important. Right now, it's a little bit harder to surround yourself with the right types of people. But like when I was first starting Muay Thai, like I surrounded myself online and with books and with movies and with like that kind of stuff that inspire me, that get me to want to actually do something and help me start to articulate and figure out what it is that I want. And so like you can continue just watching the same stuff that has no relevance to your goals in your life, or you can just make a small pivot to documentaries and things and books and biographies about people who inspire you. And like I'm telling you, reading like right now, especially because of COVID and quarantine, and most people have a little bit more downtime than normal, reading is so important. Like I just think back of like all the pivotal moments in my life, and most of them have been some type of, they've been related to a book that I was just reading. Like still,
Have you read War of Art and
yeah.
Turning
Oh,
Pro?
Liz is rereading Turning Pro right now. And it's just bringing me back to like, shit, I should reread that book because I love that book. And I remember the concept of turning pro and the concept of making the decision that like, I'm not a fucking amateur anymore. I'm a pro. And that's a mindset thing. It's not like an actual, like, okay, now I'm a professional. No, it's just like shifting your mind to be like, no, I'm a professional the way I carry myself in like a day-to-day thing. And War of Art is another great book. But all these books, like if you read these and like you actually take them in, try not to be inspired. Try not to be fucking motivated and do something, you know? And like I remember in high school and college, I didn't really enjoy reading because I felt like it was forced on me. But when I'm able to do it more on my own and pick the books that interest me and like study the things that I actually want to learn, then I'm all in on that shit, man. And it like becomes obsessive. And then when you read like the Book of Five Rings and Bruce Lee's books and like all these types of things, like it's just that's how you surround yourself in a positive environment. That's like the mental space that you need to surround yourself with. Even watching movies or shows like Kingdom, even though it's like fucked up, Kingdom was like so fucked up how crazy their lives were and everything. But like just the idea of being surrounded by other fighters and like they're all grinding and trying to do it. And like that might be just a mental thing that a trick that you're playing on your mind, but it still can motivate you. And yeah, read some fucking books. I'm reading Unbroken, and I'm like burning through that shit now. And shit's crazy. It makes you realize how privileged and like luxurious of a life we live, you know? Like fuck.
It's one of those things where you're like, oh, rock bottom goes a lot further than you thought it really goes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good book for realizing that. But even you talking about getting yourself to read, to get inspirations, to get ideas on, oh, you read this, try not to be inspired. And that's exactly what Turning Pro talks about. So I have this 3-book series where it's 3 in 1. It's the War of Art, the Turning Pro, and another one like fused into one book, and it goes from one to the next because they're all in like a series together. And it talks about exactly that, is taking those principles and just getting to work, and how that in itself brings out the muse. You know, like they talk about the muses, right, and how they inspire all of human creation. All of art is actually showing up, and those things don't show up unless you sit down and you just focus on that one thing. So like what you said, yeah, you can sit there and watch TV, and that inspiration will never come because it's this entertainment that's just stimulating your mind enough to entertain you, but not to bring out any ideas. Versus when you watch a documentary or you read a book, all of a sudden like creations happen. Where do they come from? You know, they're inspired by something.
Yeah, a lot of it's just showing up, showing up with some type of purpose, and just put in the work, put in the 10,000 hours. And like we even talk about the book Outliers and the 10,000 hours of intentional work. It's just a matter of finding something that you want to get better at, that you feel like is going to make you better as a person. And just like, I don't know whether it's me or if it's just like something that like other people do, but just like obsess over it. Like it's a game, like life is a game in a sense. I'm trying to like level up in as many ways as possible, and like trying to play the Sims and like be the best Sim character in the world, being like an RPG. Was it RPG players? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
I can't even fucking remember.
Game.
Yeah. Role play games, and like just keep leveling up your shit. Like you are that. I actually was watching so Adesanya is fighting this weekend, and I was watching a UFC Embedded, and he was playing. He was like, "This is the first time I played myself on the UFC video game, which looks sick, by the way." He was like, "I was too busy playing myself in real life in the UFC, fighting bitches." And I'm like, "Yeah, like the game of life is more fun than any video game, in my opinion. It's a little bit harder because it's a little bit more drawn out, if you know what I mean. But it's really rewarding too, and the ups and downs are a natural part of it. And we talked about some things that we would redo if we were to start over again, or not even redo, but that we would take in consideration a little bit more if we were to start our careers over again. And that made me think a lot as well. And I wish that I had a little bit more foresight, but you know how that goes. When you look back at a 10-year career, you're like, oh, I would have done this differently, or I should have focused on this. But fortunately for our listeners, they get to learn from us, and hopefully get like a running jump on just maximizing their training and their overall martial arts journey.
Yeah, I think to kind of conclude both of our ideas and styles, I think it's important that you guys just put together a plan. Just sit down right now, take a notebook and sketch out what your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday looks like for the following week. So that way, when you do sit down on Monday, you don't just sit there and go, okay, today's the day. I'm going to get started. What's the first thing that I need to get started with?
One thing I would recommend is there's this really good podcast on the Sports Motivation Podcast by Nii Shobo. He did this New Year's podcast, which is like an hour long, or no, it's like 2 or 3 hours long. But you walk through setting like these big goals and reverse engineering them. And he walks you through with prompts and everything. It's really like, and like music, it gets you fucking pumped up and shit. It's really next level stuff. So if you get a chance to check that podcast out, if you need a little bit more guidance on like how to set these goals and how to break them down and everything, that's a great free resource I would highly recommend checking out. Because yeah, it's like easy to, like we were saying, like it's easy to say you're going to do something, but actually doing it, a lot of it comes down to like the overwhelm or the lack of knowledge of like, okay, how do I actually do it though? And then you have to not waste, but you have to spend all this time and energy figuring out how to do it. And by the time you actually go to do it, like setting these goals, you're fucking exhausted because you were just trying to figure out the systematic way to actually do it. So yeah, just learn from other people. Like other people have figured this shit out, and it's just a matter of kind of like mimicking their success. Same with your fight style. You mimic what works for other people and kind of create your own fighting style. Life is beautiful in that sense, just being able to, like I was saying, like with the video game, we're just like creating our own character. We are our own character, and we're just getting to like add attributes and all these things to it if we decide to, or we can just like watch TV all day and just waste away.
Well, I feel like a lot of people go into comfort and going into the blueprint that life sets for us, just to go through high school, then get good grades to go into college and get a safe job so we can have insurance and, provide at the bare minimum for the family. But I think you can apply that same type of blueprint to a more unique endeavor. And that's exactly what we're talking about doing here, is like whatever that goal is that you're setting, to create that blueprint for yourself, starting Monday, and then it's there for you so you can follow steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and bring a little bit of comfort to this routine in something that may actually not be very comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, just a matter of taking the time to do it. And like every Sunday, that's when I set my plan for the week. And if I don't do that, man, I feel like a lost soul. I feel like I'm just drifting throughout the week. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for like following your journey back at Phuket and training with the powerhouse people. So I guess as we wrap up here, why don't we just fill each other and our audience members in on what the next steps are for us. So what do you got going on? What's your plan for the foreseeable future?
Well, we've changed that, and it's been changing on the fly, just as we talked about, like life and everything that we plan on always gets, kind of sidelined and get hit by different things. So we were planning on living in Chiang Mai till the end of the year, but it looks like we'll just be making a short trip to gather some of our belongings and move back here after we secure an apartment, and then pretty much getting ready to go on a roll at the end of the year and get in a fight routine where I'm back in rhythm the way I was when I was at Namsak Nui Gym, except just having partners that are on the same exact page as myself. I feel already sharper than I felt in the past year, and I'm really looking forward to that chapter. And I felt like I did this exactly for the reason that I was maybe a little nervous too. I felt comfortable, where we were, because I get to do whatever I want every single day. And that felt great. And especially when it comes to finances, like I started to be in a comfortable place and making more money. So like taking any risks, I was kind of scared to let go of that, like having that being financially comfortable. But I feel like where I want to get to with that goal you talked about, if I were to stay where, in the routine that I was in before, I wouldn't reach the goals that I set for myself. So I had to change the environment. So we have that, working on the clinch domination manual right now, the clinch mastery manual, that Sean and I will be putting out some videos on, a bunch of YouTube content that Sean and I just filmed. So make sure that you're checking out Sean's channel on that, and then linking back to my channel as well. In the coming weeks, we'll be putting out more content for that, and some free stuff coming out on that as well. And yeah, just making sure that you're checking in on the emails and whatnot. And what are your plans for the rest of the year?
So for the rest of the year, like there were a couple of guys at our gym at Diamond who were about to fight on Super, but for one reason or another, it just fell through. And that reignited like my want to fight. And so I've been focusing on my strength and conditioning. I've been focusing on catching up with some work in regards to filming workouts for the Fighters Body membership and also YouTube videos and that kind of stuff. But I'm going to start to, I mean, I've already started to like train seriously, but I'm trying to just get ahead of myself so I can like focus all in on training and start getting some fights, hopefully by the end of the year. And then from there, man, yeah, just trying to, we were talking about this too. I forget that we on the podcast for a while, so there's a lot that we've talked about that we probably haven't discussed on the podcast yet. But my birthday was not too long ago, and just turning 33 is every year my birthday is kind of like, fuck, I'm a year older kind of thing, and like, fuck, I can't fight forever kind of thing. And it's always like this balance of trying to figure out what my focus should be on, whether it's fighting or business or something else. And I want to shift it over for fighting while I'm able to. And so, yeah, the goal is to make next year fight year. Ideally have like my real training camps, like good 3 or 4 week camps at either Kang Si Tal or another gym that leads up to my fight. And yeah, in the meantime, just keep putting out good content on YouTube, maybe some behind the scenes kind of stuff. Keep my members happy in the Fighter's Body. Keep just doing my shit, man. And I've been really happy with the strength and conditioning program that Don Heatrick. I mean, it just feels like it makes sense. Like just doing it, and then the way I feel afterwards and everything, and the way it's all structured, it feels good. And so I'm excited to see the results from that. And then I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper into the technical and tactical areas of my Muay Thai game. And then fucking get back in the ring, man. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun.
Why don't we go into the fan questions to answer everyone's questions before we finish the podcast? And I think we'll do more in the future. If we don't get to your question, hopefully we'll save it for the next episode or use it as the title of the next episode for you to give us an idea.
So let's see. I'm going back a little bit to Jessica Rolls. She was just saying she's resonated with when we said know your why. That's huge for her. Some people train for a certain event, and when it's over, they lose their drive. My why won't ever be over. And I think that's not a question, but I think that's an important statement, just that is kind of related to everything we were talking about. Like you have to have a purpose behind everything you're doing. But any questions? We'll hang out on here for like a couple minutes. We have 37 people watching right now. So if you have a specific question that ideally isn't like technique oriented, because like we're both sitting in chairs right now and we're not like at a gym. If it's more like philosophical training methods, nutrition, strength and conditioning, we'd be happy to chat about any of that. But if not, then we'll probably start wrapping.
A pretty simple one from Dr. Heatsick. Are you supporting the gym on your shirt, or do you just like the shirt, Paul? A little bit of both. Mm-hmm. We do plan on eventually getting up to Isan to spend a weekend there with the War Watson and the orphanage. Through the Striking Academy, we were able to raise somewhere upwards of 50,000 baht, so $1,000 something, and buy a new washing machine for them. And we had a 3-month special going on. So trying to support as much as we can. They actually sent us some content for the Striking Academy on Muay Thai Technician. So we've had a great relationship, but we are yet to get to Isan. And that's definitely on our bucket list to do within the next year. That's one of the only areas in Thailand that Mia and I haven't gone to, and we're always looking for new adventures. So we'll be looking forward to getting over there. Hopefully I don't get sick from eating the food.
Yeah, right. No, I want to get over there too. They're always doing a good job. And I'm actually coming out with War Watania tank tops that are going to be in the store sometime in the near future. And all the profits will go to them. So if you guys want to rock similar shirts to Paul, but they'll be more training oriented. They'll be not these type of tank tops I'm wearing, but they'll be somewhat similar. And I'm excited for them. So keep an eye out for them. We got Jessica Rolls. Do you have suggestions for recovery, Paul?
We were talking about this at the end of the training. Eddie he was looking around the room. He's like, you think stretching helps with like the next day when you wake up in the morning and get out of bed? And I'm like, dude, you're like the same person. For a long time, I just would not, for some reason, stretch. You do the bullshit stretches at the end of like Thai class where, you reach for your toes and whatnot for 10 seconds. But having a real like ability stretching routine like a dynamic warm up pre training, and then that more of the static stretching afterwards and going through like a full routine. Because if you think about it, you're banging on these certain muscle groups and then these knots form, right? And then like when that knot forms over the joint, it just causes inflammation. And then the next day, it actually feels like you're not recovered and you're injuring yourself even further because these knots get only bigger, the inflammation gets worse, and it's actually painful where you wake up the next morning and you feel pain. I feel like stretching it back out at the end of the class or when you get home and foam roll and stretch before you get to bed, I feel like it, one, helps me fall asleep. So I sleep better, recover better that way. But then when I wake up in the morning, those knots are a little bit worked out. And then when I get up out of bed, I'm not like groaning like an old man.
Yeah, I think obviously stretching and just mobility work as a part of your day-to-day life, like doing it while you're watching TV, doing it while you're cooking, just stretching out your legs, touching your toes, just constantly keeping your body loose, and ideally having some type of morning and evening routine where you just loosen up the muscles, loosen up the joints. And then foam rolling is usually very helpful. I got a massage gun from Hydrogun, and that thing has been amazing. I was not a massage gun believer until I got this thing, and I was like, "Whoa, this shit is legit." And I use that shit like every night now. But other than that, just a lot of water, a lot of sleep, all the basic stuff, making sure your nutrition is on point, making sure you just listen to your body. But yeah, it's the constant thing that you're trying to figure out how to optimize your recovery and everything. I'm still trying to figure it out as well, how much training I can get in without like overdoing it, but making sure I'm staying efficient. So hopefully those were some useful tips for you, Jessica. And keep killing it in the fighter's body. We got
That really made me think of when you talking about like forcing yourself to do the recovery, me putting myself in a position where I try to just destroy my body. A lot of the times it makes me optimize different parts of my life. So I might be a little lazy with the stretching or the mobility or nutrition or whatever it may be, but I know that once I force myself, like Monday, we're starting this and we're doing this, a lot of the times other things shift with it when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to stretching and like being super diligent and disciplined with the other aspects of martial arts and the craft itself, like just for a healthier lifestyle, because those things have to align themselves with the one thing that you're actually trying to do. So a lot of times it like shifts your entire mindset.
Totally hear you, man. So, Twist, you got any tips how to gain weight while training 3 times a week? I'm really thin and struggling gaining weight in form of muscles. Any thoughts, Paul?
Man, you need to gain age first. I don't know how old he is, but obviously I'm like a tall, lanky guy. I had struggled with this for a long time until I was, I don't know, probably until 25. I couldn't put on much weight. And then with putting on muscle also comes on putting on fat. So you have to like really balance your nutrition further on. But pretty much post training, getting in as many carbs as possible. So you're not digging into those stores in your body already and breaking the muscle down. So just throughout the actual training sessions, if you can sip on like liquid carbohydrates, and then afterwards to just have a quick, even if it's a protein shake, to add like orange juice, to have a quick shake that has a lot of carbs, and then just getting in the adequate calorie intake, but quality calories on top of it. And
Indeed.
going with those heavy lifts, I really enjoy Don's program because it really keeps the muscle mass on me. But the most important part is that the muscles can like really perform and they can sustain that energy for a long time, because it's no good just because you're putting on an extra 5 pounds, but your performance isn't really increasing and you're fatiguing faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, essentially, just to harp on what Paul said, just eat a lot, drink a lot, and lift some heavy weights, and that's like the best recipe essentially for gaining weight. And just focusing on your nutrition is going to be a big part of that. So just make sure to dive a little bit deeper and do some research to just optimize that aspect of your life. We got Pal Ruwat. He has his first fight in Australia coming up. How should he approach it?
Like a full train, man, this is a rather loaded question. Number one, I think it's try to have as much fun in there and play with the techniques they actually learn. I know a lot of the times it feels like it's going to be mayhem, especially in the first fight. You don't know what to expect. So if you can calm your mind more than the other person, a lot of the times people will gas out. So as long as you can focus on your defense early on and get in a rhythm, I think that's really important, just to utilize your footwork, let the other guy kind of gas himself out, really work on your clinch, because distance management seems to be mayhem in the first few fights. So if you can really work on your clinch, break your opponent down in the clinch, and then make them pay, especially when they get tired, keep your mind nice and calm, keep your body threatening, but keep your mind calm.
Beautifully said. Yeah, essentially just train hard, trust your training, and have fun. Like that's the simplest way I can explain it. And yeah, don't overthink it. I mean, you're going to be going through a wave of emotions throughout training camp and throughout the fight. Just expect it. Know that they're going to be prevalent and they're going to be on the surface. But yeah, just enjoy it. Remember why you're fighting. And Paul and I have actually done a earlier podcast. I think it's like number 9 and 10, where we did a complete guide for fighting for the first time. And that's something that I would recommend going back to revisit. You can check it out on muaythaiguy.com/podcast, I believe, or you could just go back in the archives here and check that out. Definitely a good podcast to get into. And then we have Leslie. When you hit a low, like you don't feel like you have the energy to work out, to hit the bag, or even practice, what do you do to get motivated again? Typically what I do is, I mean, it's not even motivation. It's like we were talking about before. It's just like I had a plan to do it. And so I have to do it now. It's just like, it doesn't matter how I feel about it. I take away the emotions from it. It's just something that I have to do. Obviously that takes a little time to train your mind to do and train your body to do. But I've also heard of people watching inspiring YouTube videos, having some type of pre-training routine. I'm a big fan of having these transitional phases between work and training and life and yada, yada, yada. And so really focusing on that aspect and maintaining your energy. And like we were saying with the recovery stuff is like, take care of yourself, sleep, get some water, make sure you're staying mobile, stay moving. A body in motion stays in motion. And so that's my general advice. What about you, Paul? You there, man?
To surrender to the work is just the philosophy that I've been trying, because we so.
Go. You were saying surrender to the work.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So surrendering to the work, the philosophy that I've been trying to push for some time now, because a lot of the times we have these high expectations for ourselves. We want to get to the gym, but we feel like we're pretty beat up, we're not motivated, so we're not going to perform well. And then we think about how we're going to perform, and if it's not good, it makes us feel bad. Instead of thinking of it that way, just surrendering to the work, like maybe the work will defeat you. You know, maybe the heavy bag will beat you today. You won't perform as well as you normally do. And that's okay. You just surrender to that fact that that might happen, that is a possibility, and just not to have that expectation. And a lot of the times, 99% of the time, you're going to surprise yourself, because you're going to beat whatever is actually standing in front of you, and that fatigue is going to eventually fade once you actually warm up and get in rhythm, and then you feel proud of yourself for actually having done it when you didn't want to do it in the first place.
Beautifully said. So I'll bang out these next 2 questions. We got one from Sean Harris. He's in the last month of the heavy bag blueprint training. What can I do after that? First off, you spell your name correctly. Well done, Sean. And secondly, thank you for getting the heavy bag blueprint. Much love for that. It's a 6-month program. And so if you finish the 6 months, I mean, ain't no wrong in repeating it and just doing it all over again. You can't, like, in the video that Paul and I just did about like what would we do if we were to start over again, you can't get good enough at the basics. You can't get good enough at defense, you know? And so being able to revisit those and then maybe adding some strength and conditioning, checking out heatrick.com. He has a lot of great stuff. You can also do some of my shadow boxing workouts in the fighter's body, which is a whole nother workout program. And you could also consider joining a Muay Thai gym and just taking it from there. So there's a lot of different options you can do. But like if you're enjoying the program, repeat that shit, man. Like you can do that for the rest of your life and like you'll constantly be getting better. Like repetition is the mother of all skill. And so repeat it if you get a chance. And then we have where do we go? Stoff Metropole. Is it possible as a beginner to join a training camp, for example, in Greece or so? I'm assuming you're talking about one of the Muay Thai vacations that I host. And yeah, we have beginners all the time. So feel free to join us. Next, we got Justin Campbell. He just says, not a question, just a comment. Love you guys. And thank you for all the content and info you provide to all of us. Much love, Justin. Derelict, what's going on? I'm missing Bangkok. I'm sure, JM, I'm sure you've covered this, but I'd like to know if you have any heavy bag tips you can give for really utilizing the bag as a tool and not just a thing to hit. Paul, your thoughts.
Well, Sean just talked about his heavy bag program, which kind of gives you a number of things to focus on. I like to utilize the bag for everything that I would utilize it for in real life. So hitting it on angles, being able to clinch it with the heavy bag. You can also download my free program, which goes back to Sean's program, and that's at Muay Thai Technician / bag manual. It gives you a lot of really good stuff to focus on, like little points and drills that you can do on the heavy bag when it comes to clinch, transitioning to the outside range and mid range. So you have that complete Muay Thai game while you're actually hitting the heavy bag. You're practicing all 8 limbs. And then if you want to continue on, then there's also Sean's program.
Beautifully said. Yeah. I mean, I made the program so you have specific intentions every time you hit the heavy bag, whether it's focusing on defense or focusing on conditioning or focusing on lead side strikes or focusing on countering. There's a bunch of workouts just for that kind of stuff. And you don't have to think about what you're doing in regards to like, you don't have to create what you're doing, but you have to obviously do the technique and do the drills and stuff. But I do the thinking for you. You just have to actually act and do the workout. So that's why people really enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. And now whenever I do my own heavy bag workouts, I usually have a theme for each round that I do. And that usually helps me have a little bit more purpose, whether it's focusing on throwing a combination and then having a defensive maneuver at the end of the combination, or starting a combination with a fake, or maybe just using my lead side strikes, or maybe starting off with a teep. I always try to think of one main thing that I want to work on and then just kind of build up around that. And that generally helps keep me focused. Otherwise, I can kind of just mindlessly hit the bag and I don't really have much focus behind it. So just having some intention, taking 5 seconds before you start hitting the bag to set an intention, I think is really, really important. Next, we got Edward Pillowhands. All right. How do you guys go about when training with trainers and not getting competitive without hurting their egos? Do you keep it playful or you let them have their wins? I'm a little confused by the question. Because like the trainers are there to train you, and if it's talk about training partners, like then ego could get in the way. But I don't know, Paul, do you have any thoughts? I'm not sure how to answer this question.
When it comes to trainers, I would be confused. If it comes to I would maybe rethink the way you're thinking. And that would be my answer when it comes to trainers. Like, oh, I'm here. I beat them up, but I don't want to like really get into their ego. You know, if they're teaching you what they're going through, then you should just be following like their instruction, the way that they feel like they frame their sparring and training, and work on the things that they're telling you to work on. And most of the things that you should be doing is what they have taught you, so they should know the defense to it as well. But if you are the master and and when it comes to sparring with your training partners and ego getting in the way, one thing that I like to practice is pretty much going in with a really good attitude, you know, having a smile, showing the person that this is not personal, touching gloves, and then just really trying to work. We've talked about this before. Like we had a video on like hard sparring versus light sparring, and how I like to be kind of in the middle, go a little harder to the body, go a little harder to the legs, not try to damage the head because that's irreplaceable damage. You can't get those brain cells back, right? So just doing the best I can with that, and just defeating the opponent with technique. There's no ego involved there. You know, if they're stepping in the way of shots, unfortunately, that's on them. And then at the end of the training session, you know, at the end of the round, I bow, I dap, I give them a hug no matter what, even if I see that they got frustrated or whatever may happen. You know, I've definitely had a lot of moments where I felt like someone's ego got in the way, and I try to let them know that, like, hey, it's all good. It's not personal. Like I can tell you got frustrated, so you know, I just dap you up. I give you love anyways.
Well said. So we'll start wrapping up these questions. We'll kind of do rapid fire because it's getting a little late. But first off, we have, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name. I hurt my upper arm while doing shadow boxing, sort of stuck, and stopped weight training for my left arm. Any advice? It's hard to say without knowing. To be honest, I broke my left arm and I couldn't use that, so I focused on other things. That's always a good way to go about it. Focus on your right arm and your right kick and your left kick and everything in between. Other than that, just try to work on mobility, I would say, and maybe look into some physical therapy as well. Elders back, just your training, etc. Like how much can you do per day? Like not doing, like not other doing. I'm assuming how much can you train per day? And I'll just answer that real quick. The Thais train like 6 to 7 hours a day when they're like starting and like building up just the militarized schedule of a Thai when they're like 5 years old, trained to be a Muay Thai soldier essentially. But for us, it's a little bit differently. Like I train between 2 to maybe 5 to 6 hours a day, depending on the day. But when I train, it's all focused. And I think that's the most important thing. It's not about how much, it's about how quality your training is. Obviously, you need to put in the work and put in the hours and repetition, but the quality of it is going to far outplay the quantity of it, in my opinion. What about you?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we added a lot more volume recently, but that's only made me more focused on the actual technique, because I know we have 5 rounds of pad work, 5 rounds of sparring. We have 20, 30 minutes of clinch coming up. So it just makes me that much more focused on technique, so I'm more efficient. But pretty much that 5 to 6 hours or less hours, but just a lot more focus and better quality training.
Jacko Van Rieden asks, what's your prediction for Muay Thai post COVID-19? I think eventually things will get back to pretty normal. I mean, I feel like it's crazy times right now, but I feel like there's been crazier times in human history. I just think it's been exacerbated because of the internet and the way that travel and everything works. But I think in time, things will get back to normal with Muay Thai. There'll be just as much training, just as much fighting as ever before. And yeah, do you think any differently, Paul?
I mean, Muay Thai tourism has definitely taken a huge hit, and a lot of gyms won't recover from it. But you know, that just leaves other gyms, you know, for you to support. And I think that a lot of things are going to like slowly come back and change, but I think the MMA scene is already setting a standard for it, and things will eventually go back to normal. I think people are getting like really sick of it, and I mean, even here in Thailand, they just opened up Thai Fight with a full crowd now, so things are getting back to normal. The people that maybe quit along the way, you know, that's tough. You know, like I want everyone to enjoy the sport and love the sport. I want every gym to stay open. But I think eventually, you know, it's those that can adapt.
Well said. Do you think I can actually show this on the screen? Boom. Sean, what do you think is better working on? Conditioning more or just working on Muay Thai techniques more? Yes. Both. Do both. Do both. There you go. Derelict. Sean, are you planning vacations for 2021 and any in the US? Planning on it, yes, but like we've been talking about the entire podcast, we're going with the flow for things. mean, I would love to go back to Greece. It was just my anniversary, and all these things are popping up in my Facebook timeline about our times in Greece. And I definitely miss it there. And it would be great to be back in the US at some point to see my family and friends. But nothing set in stone yet. We'll probably do a Thailand camp whenever it makes sense to do a Thailand camp, and yeah, just kind of take it from there. But I'll definitely be keeping everyone up to date when those things happen. Paul, you said you have a couple questions from Instagram, I believe.
Yes, we maybe you can answer this one, especially because you're at the gym right now. But from Kung Willie, how is the Yoda trainer from DMT doing right now?
Krumon. He's doing well. I mean, like, he went through a pretty traumatic experience with a truck accident, and he couldn't walk for quite a while, and his mom died in the accident as well. So it's been a long road to recovery. But whenever I do see him, he always puts a smile on. He always seems in good spirits, but I know that he's battling a lot. It's good to see him around the gym every now and then, but it's going to be a little bit longer of a fight to get back to semi-normal. But he's able to walk, he's able to jog, and so that's all good news so far.
And one more question. There's a number more, but I think we just got to cut it short for tonight, and then we'll answer the remainder. Strengthening the lower back to prevent injuries. I mean, I've seen this injury in a lot of people. Our friend Gage that was just at the camp that had a lot of lower back issues. He had to have some injections done. And I think in preventing lower back injuries, doing a lot of stability work for the back, like plank holds and weighted plank holds, and then eventually, like if your back is strong enough, doing deadlifts with good form. All these things are really important when it comes to good form. So a lot of the things that people think actually damage the back are the things that actually strengthen it. It's just about challenging it in the right way. I think taking a lot of Don Hitra's work, as we talked about before, is really important. You can get really specific for Muay Thai, since you're doing a lot of twisting and pulling, then a lot of deadlift work, a lot of stability work, and then just activating the glutes and keeping your body rather balanced. So like if you're punching all the time and you're pushing all the time, try to get more pulling work in, a lot more pull-ups, a lot more pulling deadlifts, rows, things like that to even out your body.
Yeah, I mean, doing the exercises that are going to help you, like a lot of core exercises that involve the lower back, like Supermans and skydivers and like that kind of stuff that a lot of people end up taking for granted because they're not the sexy get six-pack abs kind of thing. They're the less aesthetically pleasing lower back exercises. And so, yeah, Google is a hell of a tool, man. Like, check out some YouTube videos on how to strengthen your lower back and everything. And you can probably find a bunch of routines that can help you with that as well. And so, yeah, just be your own best student and teacher and research the shit out of it and see what you can come up with.
Yeah, Prehab Guys on Instagram and PT Vitals are two pages I personally like to follow for like rehab exercises and mobility to like make sure I'm preventing any injuries and healing up from my past injuries. All right, guys. Thank you guys for watching. We're going to be doing these on the weekly. Sean and I, speaking of getting into a routine, forcing yourself, I think it's good to take a little bit of risk. So then there's repercussions to doing so. So we pretty much bet $50 each that we have to pay to each other's girlfriends and wives if we don't get on the podcast or reschedule it to the week after. So you're going to get an episode every week. I think it's smart if we maybe get back on the Patreon to get a second incentive on that. So we'll be back on the next episode to give you more details on that one. And then before next week, any news for all of our listeners, Sean?
No, not that I'm aware of. It was always good to get back on here. I'm excited about our little bet because I think just that little bit of accountability will go a long way. And I also know that since we're not in the same physical vicinity now, it'll be important for us just to be keeping up to date with our training. I think we both are able to talk about environment and everything, right? We're not physically next to each other, but as long as we're able to keep in touch, then we're able to motivate each other and help each other figure out certain things that might be holding us back. And so in that same space, we'll be hopefully helping you and all the listeners who are listening to this podcast by talking through the stuff we're going through and answering fan questions. So I saw, David, you were asking if you have a question somewhere, then can you answer it somewhere else? You can message us on Instagram, on probably Instagram's the best, or email are the two best ones, or show up here live. We're going to be aiming for, this is, I think, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time on Thursdays is going to be like the regularly weekly schedule that we aim for. And then we'll make sure that we email or post about it on our social media, just to give you a little heads up if we happen to change the times and stuff. But yeah, hopefully this helped in one form or another. And then, yeah, we'll catch you on the next episode. What about you, Paul? Anything you want to leave our listeners with?
No, I think I just want to say I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for listening back in. We'll be back at it next week and hope to see you there. Muay Thai guys.